What's going on guys, Xeno here, and I've got a very quick build video for you today just for those who are either playing on seasons or haven't quite managed to obtain their full Ancient LoN set yet. This build is a variation of the Helltooth set with the pet utility of the LoN build, but it's obviously much easier to obtain. I consider this build a placeholder build for the LoN set, so I wouldn't really recommend it as your main GR pushing build. However, I did manage to scrape a 77 rift of this since recording, which is actually very impressive for the build considering it's not far off my LoN build numbers. I haven't even bothered to fully optimize my Helltooth set yet due to wanting to reserve my gems and stuff for the next LoN build. So I highly recommend this whilst waiting for your endgame build. So let's get into what you'll be needing to run it. So you'll of course be needing a full Helltooth set minus the gloves, which you'll instead want for a Tasker and Theos. This is primarily a pet build, so you'll need the attack speed increase on their damage. Next you'll want a Witching Hour belt. And the reason we're using this over a belt of Transcendence is because you're not really casting very often with this build, so it's very difficult to summon your fetishes because of that. So the next best thing is a Witching Hour belt, which offers you the highest DPS increase for this slot. Next you'll want a pair of Lacumba's braces so that you can maintain a basic level of survivability with this build, which is also why your main weapon will be a Sacred Harvester. Working together with your braces, you'll want to be trying to maintain 10 stacks of Soul Harvest pretty much all the time. For your mojo, it's a toss-up between the Kitty and the Serpent. However, when running with zombie dogs, I always preference the Serpent just for the consistency it gives. I'd rather be able to absorb lots of medium damage and dodge the big hits rather than, you know, be able to take one big hit and die to everything else. So, Serpent for me. For your rings, you'll want the Short Man's Finger, which is where the majority of the damage will be coming from, followed by a Convection of Elements. Now, I've toyed around with the idea of using a Tall Man's Finger here. However, I've not really had time, and the COE is just a tried and tested go-to when you have the free slot. For your amulet, you'll most likely want a Hellfire amulet with one of the relevant passives, which we'll get into shortly. And for your cubed items then, you'll absolutely be needing a Furnace for the elite damage and a Mask of Joram. Now, you can also put the Taskers in here if you want to equip the Joram, depending on which is better rolled. And for your third item, you'll be needing a Royal Ring of Grandeur to complete the Helltooth 6-piece bonus. A quick run through of the stats you'll be wanting on your items then. For your helm, Intellect, Vitality, Crit Chance. For your shoulders, Intellect, Vitality, Gargantuan damage, and either CD reduction or area damage. For your chest, Intellect, Vitality, Gargantuan damage. For your braces, Intellect, Vitality, Crit Chance, and cold damage. For your Witching Hour, Intellect, Vitality, attack speed, and crit damage. For your gloves, Intellect, Crit Chance, and crit damage, with Vitality or attack speed, as they're both viable. But attack speed isn't really prioritized as much with this build as it is with the LoN builds, but you'll see that I've got a lot of attack speed on some of my items because this gear is being used on my LoN builds. For your legs, you want Intellect, Vitality, and Armor. For your feet, Intellect, Vitality, Armor, and the fourth slot is optional. For your weapon, it's not as specific a requirement in terms of stats, but obviously you'll be wanting a high as possible damage roll, potentially combined with a 10% damage increase. Again, CD reduction and area damage are probably more important to this build over attack speed. For your mojo, you will ideally be having a high damage roll with Intellect, Vitality, Crit Chance, and elite damage. But if you're, having to settle for another stat instead of maybe elite damage, you can again go with CD reduction or area damage. For your rings and amulet, you'll want Crit Chance and crit damage, followed by Intellect or cold damage. For your legendary gems, you'll be using Bane of the Trapped, Bane of the Stricken, and the Enforcer gem. For the spells then, we'll be using Wall of Death with the Communing Spirits rune, which will be buffing our pet damage and defenses every time we cast it, alongside our second spell, Piranado, which we'll be using to clump packs of enemies together within range of our Gargantuans so they can, just smash through them with relative ease. We'll be using Soul Harvest with the Languish rune, which is not only necessary for keeping up the 10 stacks of defensive and damage bonus, like we said before, but the rune also offers a temporary armor boost, which you'll be wanting to make the most of at every opportunity. We of course are running with the Gargantuan ability with the Humongoid rune, and zombie dogs with either Chilled to the Bone or Leeching Beasts, depending on whatever your preference is. Finally, we're running with our trusty Spirit Walk with the Jaunt rune this time. Severance is probably my favourite rune. However, with this build, you'll be needing the extra second of uptime to dance through mobs whilst waiting for your Soul Harvest to come off CD, which might not make much sense right now, but as you play the build, it will come naturally to you. For our passives then, we are running with Midnight Feast, Brave Injustice, Swampland Attunement, and Pierce the Veil. Now, we're using Pierce the Veil over Confidence Ritual, mostly because there are times when you'll be playing from range so it adds a bit of consistency to your damage, as well as the fact this build uses very little mana, which won't ever become an issue. So you'll also want Spirit Vessel, which I have on my Hellfire Amulet. You could probably figure out which paragons to take, but obviously prioritize crit chance, crit damage, CD reduction, then attack speed, and defensively armor, life, and then resistances. Alright guys, that's the build. I'll try to have the new LoN build out within the next day or two, so keep an eye out for that. And as always, if you like the video, please give it a like and consider subscribing if you're not already for more Diablo content coming soon. Alright guys, until next time, take care.